Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, September 20th, 2022. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, national political correspondent for the Washington Post, author of the Trailer newsletter, Dave Weigel, from the state of the midterms. Also on the program today, Puerto Rico still without power. The Dominican Republic without running water, all in the wake of Hurricane Fiona, which is building strength. Texas sheriff opens an investigation into DeSantis' immigrant hoax. The Fifth Circuit federal court decision is the latest to show how corrupted our judiciary has become. Senate races tighten in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, Nevada. Already tight in North Carolina. Meanwhile, Republicans in the Senate may tank Manchin's permitting plan for us. Mike Pillow Lindell defamation suit moves forward as his motion to dismiss was quashed by the deep state. Montana reverses, will comply with a court order to allow trans residents to change their birth certificates. A Trump federal district judge says gun ownership ban for felons is unconstitutional. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. Emma Vigeland here, of course, as always, with this announcement about today.
It is Newsday Tuesday.
Yes, except for we're doing news, but we're doing it with Dave Weigel. We are now less than 8 weeks out. We're 6 weeks out?
Yeah.
Really?
September's flying by.
Flying by. And from the midterms, this is going to be obviously a pretty big, pretty consequential midterms as far as they go. In the event that the Democrats can hold the House and pick up 2 seats in the Senate, the Democrats are going to be in a position where they're going to be held to account for moving legislation, because there's every reason to believe that, at least based upon what those 48 senators have, if not said explicitly, but implicitly, the filibuster will get some reformation. We shall see. If the House is not held, but the Senate is held, it's going to give Joe Biden the opportunity to put more judges on the bench, which, as we go through maybe some of the rulings today, crucially important. So we will see what happens over the next 5 or 6 weeks, because the races are still very fluid, and that's why we want to bring Dave Weigel on to talk about it. Meanwhile, there is a lot of questions as to exactly how about 45 Venezuelan migrants who were in Texas, in Bexar County, Texas, or San Antonio, how they ended up going from San Antonio to Florida, then to Martha's Vineyard. There is a lot of questions around this Perla, who was apparently the woman who was approaching these migrants in Texas.
She was quoted in the NPR article initially, and she essentially said that this is how she was promised work papers, expedited work papers, and then she was tasked with recruiting other migrants.
Yeah, and it seems a little bit dubious, that story, because now we know that, and this is from Talking Points memo, but they're apparently most of the news about this angle of it are coming from local reporting out of the Cape Cod Times and the San Antonio Report. That Perla was a tall blonde woman with light complexion. She reportedly worked with 2 other women and 2 men, one of whom drove a white pickup. This does not sound like an immigrant herself. They apparently housed the migrants at a hotel near the airport for multiple days as they attempted to reach a quota. The quota was apparently 60, and they were disappointed they weren't able to get a sufficient number of people. And as Josh Marshall at Talking Points memo says, nothing about this sounds remotely like any kind of state government-run or directed operation, at least not on the books. We now know via Jed Legum that there was a copy of a brochure that was actually sort of like made up from a UN refugee settlement thing in terms of what it was promising. And there's some question is like, how did this operation, what relationship did they have with the governor of Florida? So far, there have been we have heard nothing from the Department of Justice as to, and there could potentially be federal charges here. We don't know. I mean, this went across state lines, but certainly the sheriff from Bexar County is beginning to investigate to find out what laws may have been broken. Here is Javier Salazar, Bexar County Sheriff.
We are opening up a case with an investigation with regard to the suspected activities involving the 48 migrants from Venezuela that, as we understand it at this point, the facts of the case at this point, are that on Wednesday, September 14th, here in Bexar County in the city of San Antonio, our understanding is that a Venezuelan migrant was paid what we would call a bird dog fee to recruit approximately 50 migrants from the area around a migrant resource center on San Pedro here in San Antonio. As we understand it, 48 migrants were lured, I will use the word lured, under false pretenses into staying at a hotel for a couple of days. They were taken by airplane. At a certain point, they were shuttled to an airplane where they were flown to Florida and then eventually flown to Martha's Vineyard, again, under false pretenses is the information that we have, that they were promised work, they were promised the solution to several of their problems. They were taken to Martha's Vineyard from what we can gather for little more than a photo op, video op, and then they were unceremoniously stranded in Martha's Vineyard. What infuriates me the most about this case is that here we have 48 people that are already on hard times, right? They are here legally in our country at that point. They have every right to be where they are. And I believe that they were preyed upon. Somebody came from out of state, preyed upon these people, lured them with promises of a better life, which is what they were absolutely looking for, and with the knowledge that they were going to cling to whatever hope they could be offered for a better life, to just be exploited and hoodwinked into making this trip to Florida and then onward to Martha's Vineyard for what I believe to be nothing more than political posturing to make a point. Well, look, we all know that during a political campaign, things can get nasty, things can get out of hand.
All right, I think that we don't need any more of that. I mean, the point is, he's opening investigation, and how someone from DeSantis's office got on the plane in Miami to videotape it so they could, when they got off the plane, and they gave that videotape directly to Fox. I mean, it's unclear, was it tax dollars that was involved in this? Mm-hmm. Who was this migrant who was working with 4 or 5 other people to put up people in a hotel? Where did the money come for that? These are all questions I think that ultimately need to be answered. And
that Talking Points memo article says it looks like a Project Veritas type stunt. I would not be shocked if right-wing groups like Project Veritas or other similar kind of right-wing troll groups are involved. We just don't know yet.
Wasn't there a right-wing like millionaire who funded the was it Kristi Noem's
travel down to the border?
Yeah, the National Guard
stuff.
And so it's quite possible that's what's going on. But I mean, there's fraud here. And arguably trafficking. I don't know. They'll obviously investigate these issues, but
I'd also just underline the fact that so far that they were lured with promises of work, right? Not freebies or anything like that,
right? And
not ballots harvested from Joe Biden's office.
And also, these people were legal. They were undocumented, but they were legal by any definition of the word. They all had court dates because they were in the system, which is exactly what is called for by the statutes of this country. It's abusive. It really is abusive. And regardless of where they're flown, without their sort of consent and understanding as to where they were going. But hopefully, and is it just a countdown until Tucker Carlson has a segment on this where it's more Joe Biden weaponizing, I guess, the local sheriffs in San Antonio?
Authoritarianism.
Authoritarianism.
Wow. Fish rots from the head down, right?
Yep. All right. Well, listen, we're going to... It got all the way down pretty quick.
Yeah, I know.
Down to the county level, Texas.
Hey, that's a deep state for you.
24 months. That's all it takes. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Dave Weigel. He is the national political correspondent for the Washington Post, author of The Trailer, to get a sense of what the hell is going on out there. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Want to welcome back to the program the national political correspondent for the Washington Post, author of The Trailer, which you should all be reading, Dave Weigel. Dave, nice to see you again.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Let's talk about what we're seeing out there. I think we tried to touch base in August after the special election in New York. It's also part of the primary in New York's 19th. Let's just start there just briefly, because this was supposedly a bellwether district. It is, and I'm not as convinced it's as bellwethery for this special election as it will be in the new 19th in New York. I live up there and have lived up there full time over the years. I vote up in the 19th. that district has changed a little bit since COVID. And I wonder what your sense is of how much of a bellwether that was. The Democrat, a guy named Pat Ryan, won. He is a county supervisor over in one of the counties in that district. A fairly popular guy and a good candidate. He will be running in the 18th. There's a different guy who's running in the 19th, but the same Republicans running in the new 19th in New York. I hope this isn't too complicated for people, but just as a general rule, what did you take from that?
It is very complicated. I mean, there was one debate between the Republican and the Democrat nominee in this current, district that's going away. They must have spent 15 minutes just describing because one was running in the new seat, one's running the old seat. But it was bellwether. You pointed out that it changed a lot. It changed because thousands of people from New York City relocated from crowded apartments. I assume they're pretty crowded, to larger houses in the Hudson Valley. So Democrats benefited from thousands of new voters in this seat in places like Kingston and New Paltz. The liberal towns got more liberal. But this was really a test of the Dobbs decision and how the end of federal abortion guaranteed rights were affecting people even in blue states. So Republicans wanted to be a bellwether before they lost it. Democrats always wanted to. I talked to Pat Ryan early in July when they were kind of struggling for media attention. Not money, but media attention. That Republicans had a poll having been 15 points down. And he said, yeah, we're going to make this race a referendum on choice. So his first big TV ad was about choice. He was a veteran. He linked that to fighting for choice. And you really have seen this across the country in places. Now, suburb is like a word that can get mangled and redefined. I mean, I don't think New Paltz is not really a suburb of anything. But generally places where people have been moving to the left since Trump got elected, where they were starting to walk back in 2021, voting for Glenn Youngkin in Virginia. Those places you saw a kind of freezing and then a move and then a sort of a march back after the Dobbs decision. And the way a lot of Democrats put it to me is just that people will vote against bad things they don't like the government doing. But in this case, the bad thing the government did, in their view, was what the Supreme Court did. So you're not voting for Joe Biden to punish, voting against Democrats to punish Joe Biden for the Dobbs decision. You're voting against Republicans. And Republicans had, for something they wanted for 49 years, just didn't have a good plan to respond to that, apart from saying, don't worry about it. I mean, that was the strategy in New York was basically, hey man, it's like New York. We're not gonna change the law here. Don't worry about it.
How much has what Graham did in raising this abortion ban, and how much has that had ripple effects, based upon your sense out in the country? You tour around, you're reporting on this stuff. How much has that sort of, kept the wound fresh and from cauterizing, as it were? And then I guess the other question is how much did these sort of immigration stunts by Abbott and DeSantis over the past week or two sort of it feels like Graham is on the news every day trying to sort of make it clear that he didn't make a mistake, and everybody else is just going, dude, stop it. You're making a mistake.
Yeah. Well, there are two tracks those are happening on. I think the Graham thing got attention. I mean, he announced it late notice. I think he announced it, or Sean Hannity announced it was coming the night before he gave this morning press conference. And so he ran that out there. That is, I'd say, manifesting mostly in paid advertising. So that's on the paid advertising track. If you're turning on TV, I'm in North Carolina right now for a friend's wedding, but if you turn on TV in Florida, turn on TV, anywhere the swing seat, Democrats are saying Republicans want a national abortion ban. They've been tying that to the Lindsey Graham thing, saying, look, let's discuss what happens if Republicans have a Senate majority. They really do want to pass this. They have a House majority. They really do want to pass this. And their leadership's not being honest with you. The DeSantis thing, there's not as much paid advertising directly on that, so I don't know how it's affecting things yet. And also, what DeSantis is doing is something that had been happening, like a lower resonance from Greg Abbott, mostly Greg Abbott, for months, which is this taking not just migrants, but asylum seekers who arrive in Texas and shipping them to blue states where they're being resettled, and kind of mocking the blue states for not being able to process them very quickly. Now it's like, of course they can't. Texas has a ton of border infrastructure Border Patrol agents, places processing centers, detention centers. New York does not. But they were trying to prove this point. And the DeSantis thing is such an odd story that I think it's extended beyond the life of the stunt, because you've seen these questions today. Why is the governor of Florida routing migrant, asylum seekers in Texas who were going to just have appointments in other places, rounding them up and sending them to a different state to make a point? And the Martha's Vineyard thing, pure trolling. I mean, he'd been saying that's kind of like really kind of manifesting into the real world a joke from like Fox News segments. That is a strange story that I think people is reminding people of some immigration problems. But when you see immigration Republican at messaging, it's not just look at these people climbing a fence. That's bad. Some of it is. There's some people who have the Tucker Carlson like they're taking our jobs argument. But it's usually, look, immigrants are coming in, and that's bad because fentanyl, because of drugs. Humanizing who these people are and saying there are 50 people that you can profile and meet who have asylum stories, who are fleeing Venezuela or fleeing countries. They're not drug traffickers. They're not going with packs of fentanyl under their arms. This is a different story, and I don't know how it's going to affect things. It's because the paid messaging is border open drugs. That's the message. It's not border open nice guy from Venezuela fleeing socialism. That has not been the story. But in Republic, and I think John Chait's very good, whatever people think of him, I pointed this out. Just DeSantis exists even much more than Trump did in just a world of conservative media where no one saw a downside.
Well, but that's, I think, who this is for, right? Like, this is not, DeSantis is going to win re-election easily, most likely, in the fall. And so this is all about just building up his portfolio for 2024 with right-wing troll stunts. But, I mean, for me, I don't know how if it affects actually November at all. It's really just about him making his file a bit fatter ahead of the primary cycle. I think he's peaking a little early, honestly, but that's what this is about to me.
Yeah, I think it's much easier to analyze as something that makes sense to other Republicans. That's cool. I mean, you were saying it just now, and I was pointing to like if this really is like if you're watching TV and then the like the Max Headroom, like the person just comes off the screen and starts addressing you. It's like, hey, aren't you angry? We're actually doing that thing that we joked about on the Fox segment last night. But yeah, I don't think it means the same thing to voters, because there's a reason why just pure nativism, nationalism, build the wall politics was not a winner in America for a long time. It's pretty complicated. Most Americans see themselves as descendants of immigrants. They'll talk about which generation they're from sometimes. And Republicans, I think, got very heady with how they were gaining with Latino voters despite being the party of build the wall, keep migrants out. But this part of the conversation is more, wouldn't it be awesome if we made immigrants go to these blue states? Yeah, take that, sanctuary status. And that's not how most people see it. Like it's really the drugs and the crime thing. I mean, for that line Trump said in 2015, they're bringing drugs, they're bringing rapists, they're bringing crime. Look, that he said it because that's powerful. Like the stories of, you'll see TV ads where like somebody got killed, their relative got killed by a drunk driver, and they'll say he wasn't even supposed to be here. That's one. That is what kind of, when you're taking this from the Republican green room to the voters' reality, that's what you do. Not this. Not just immigrants exist. Isn't it funny that liberals don't like when they're in their backyard? That's not how you win people. That's just how you get the B block of the 8 p.m. Fox show.
I grew up in Worcester, so I have known about Martha's Vineyard since I was a kid. My dad used to go and sleep on the beach there when he was, 60, 70 years ago or something like that. When it was just, there was nobody there apparently. But do people around the country know what, does it mean anything to them? Or is that just sort of like an inside baseball for, folks like DeSantis, who is Ivy League, he's been up in that area.
He vacations at Nantucket instead of Martha's.
Well, but honestly, does it, because it has a feel of like Chicago style politics, which when they were hammering Obama with that, I was like, people don't have any idea what you're talking about. Like they're not the San Francisco style politics, that doesn't mean what it meant, 30, 40 years ago. Does it resonate with people? Like, it just seems like an odd like a stunt that is really geared more towards, I don't know, the, Breitbart folks, just to sort of win them over or something.
I think more so. Yeah, I don't see this resonating the same way that all the drug trafficking stuff resonates. And that is a worry. Like the left gets into this too. Like definitely this we've seen this happen over the years. So of people getting over their skis and all right, forget polls, but like people are angry about police murdering people and getting away with it, and then going too far and turning it into. And that's why we need to abolish the police. Like the right in the media is very good at polarizing the most far out there sounding left wing idea, and not even giving a space to debate it. Just saying, okay, we're all going to run away from this. You've not seen that from Republicans. They have a different space, and I think just it's so tantalizing, the idea of humiliating the left with this morality test. Even when another point I've seen a lot of people make. If you're watching Fox, you might be under the impression all these migrants were quickly deported. Like I think the New York Post cover says deported. They were not deported. The words mean things. Deported means you're kicked out of the country. That was not what happened. They were processed to a different part of the immigration system. So yeah, it does become a problem for that voter who's not just drinking in Fox News all day. Just the way it's like there's information about Republicans that the MSNBC viewer doesn't use, but this is much more intense. So I haven't seen it yet. I mean, I've not seen ads develop this yet because the idea that like America shouldn't be giving asylum to people is not as popular. And the overall idea I'd say for Republicans is this is an issue that we poll great on, and immigration. The idea that there's an open border, that Biden's failing, that's a winner for us. So if we're talking about the winner for us, we're doing better than talking about a loser. Generally, that's true. But you can. I mentioned police reform not to be glib and compare the two of them, but you can have an issue that's a winner for you and bungle it so badly that people turn against you. It happens all the time.
All right. Well, let's get to some specific races because, I guess let's just start with the House, just generally speaking. What's your sense of the opportunity for Democrats to hold the House at this point?
It's still very, very tough for them to hold it. I think Democrats would be not happy, but a scenario some Democrats have said if it's like a single-digit GOP House majority and the Democrats run the Senate, you're going to have Republicans unable to govern in the House, fighting amongst themselves, and Democrats confirming judges. They'd be okay with that. So there's not many Democrats, except when I think they're like saying so to an interviewer, to donors, saying they can still hold it, because you need to they would need to hold every district that they have, even under the new map, under the new gerrymander, including about half a dozen that Trump won by some margin. That's very, very tough to do. I mean, that involves like holding Southwest Wisconsin, which has been trending their way, where there's going to be high Republican turnout. It involves like holding on to the Iowa seat, which is tough for them, which is like 50-50. There's just Ron DeSantis, who we keep talking about. Like if it's like a single-digit House majority for Republicans, they will probably credit him because he redrew 3 seats in Florida that should have been competitive or gone Democratic for Republicans, and they're off the map. So they need to basically pitch a perfect game where Republicans can bat like 200 and win. That's the House picture. They have an advantage though because Republicans, I think they haven't overextended as much as Democrats did in the past. But I was just writing about some of this today, and like the full Republican target list includes places that voted for Biden by 20 points. Like in the summer, they were thinking, and like even after Dobbs, where the polling came back, they're like, well, these suburbs are so gone, we can win everything. I don't think they're going to be able to win everything. They're competing for a lot of stuff where if voters regress to the mean, Democrats are probably going to come in at like 205 House seats. But I don't think they can. It would be one of the greatest, upsets of all time. But we've lived through probably 5 of those
right.
If they hold it by any margin at all.
All right. Well, so let's turn to the Senate. It feels like there's maybe a half a dozen really contested races that are going to be consequential. North Carolina is one of those. This is a possible pickup for Democrats. Possible pickup in Pennsylvania. Possible pickup in Wisconsin. There's a tight defense in Nevada and in New Hampshire. maybe arguably Colorado. Give me your sense of those races, and if there's another one that you're looking at that you think is going to be relevant as well.
That's a pretty solid list. I mean, I would add Ohio, which I was a skeptic about.
Ohio
but
as well.
We're watching a few things as the race get closer. Things the candidates can control, things they can't control. So I think the candidates can control am I going to be any good in a debate? And so with the Pennsylvania race, I think it's a little more complicated than this because the Republican messaging is mostly about crime, and they think they've got an in there because of hyping the fear of crime. But if John Fetterman shows up and is fine in a debate, he's been winning. He's far more personally liked than Dr. Oz. It looks like he not only survived a stroke, but he can do the job. I feel like that one the Republicans are very pessimistic about. And you mentioned Nevada. I'd say it's kind of a late state. If you're watching election night, it's closing at 11 o'clock. But that's one if Republicans are not clearly winning that state because you've got a lot of white voters without college degrees. You have Latinos who are more working class who've been trending Republican. If Democrats can hold on to those races, like the Senate race especially, I think Republicans are going to be way underperforming the whole election. And that's not stuff like the candidates can run, but Catherine Cortez Masto herself cannot have conversation with 100,000, Obama to Trump voters and convince them all in one go. Please come back to me. That's one of those races where really any state that's less than Trump plus 20, they are saying, look, yeah, we've made some mistakes. Inflation's too high, et cetera, but it's getting better. And do you really want these people to take over? A version of the argument they made in 2010 didn't work then, but look, the economy is objectively just better for people now than it was in 2010. And the Republican brand is the Trump brand. It's not the Tea Party. It's not something new. It is, do you really want this particular party back in power? So I think that's what you're watching. And Ohio's stranger because Ryan has been just separating from the rest of the Democratic ticket in a pretty unpopular state by bashing Vance as kind of a corporate tool and a right winger and trying to reignite there's just hundreds of thousands of Democrats turned Republicans in that state who just have not voted for any Democrat in the last few years. That one I'm watching to see if is the Republican branding so bad in some places that where they should just automatically be flipping people that they're not. But yeah, Nevada, I wish it was earlier in the night. Like Nevada, New Hampshire, if you wanted to look a little closer, because New Hampshire had its primary last week. Republicans nominated, I think it's safe to say, the anti-establishment candidates. That's like the brand everybody wants. It's kind of jargon, but in each race, Senate and both House races, national Republicans and Governor Sununu endorsed a candidate who they said could win, and the voters said nope, and they nominated somebody more right wing. So if New Hampshire is like competitive, like if Democrats are not holding both House seats and they're not holding that Senate seat, like great night for Republicans. They're probably going to win a ton of stuff that we didn't see coming.
All right, let's just go back and in New Hampshire, I think Bolduc, the Senate candidate, got sort of benefited in his primary, I guess, from like some Chuck Schumer spending. I think, the classic, he's too conservative for New Hampshire type of situation is my understanding. And that may have like helped him in that primary. And then, certainly the person that Maggie Hassan wanted to run against. But just going back to Nevada, it feels to me like over the years that Nevada always looks like it's going to be tighter than it was, at least with Harry Reid. Like it looked like Harry Reid was going to lose, I think, like 2 different times, and he comes out and he wins big. Does that dynamic, whatever Harry Reid did in that state, does that still exist now that he's passed on? I mean, or is that a function of like union strength there? What is it that feels to me like Nevada ends up breaking for Democrats more often than it appears it's going to?
Yeah, you mentioned the union strength. It's really that. It's that because Harry Reid was trailing in polls in 2010 is like the classic example. Then he wins. There were polls having Trump ahead. He wins. The race just kind of breaks away from him and goes to Democrats in 2020. It is the union support. It's also they're back to normal canvassing and normal campaigning after they couldn't do it completely in 2020. So the hunch there for Democrats has always been if we're tied, spot us a few points because we have this incredible ground game. And they have it even when Republicans when they're in good shape or they're bad shape. And this is a weird moment for Nevada Republicans. They've nominated a bunch of far-right candidates, far-right candidate for Secretary of State. Adam Laxalt would be seen as far-right, except he, was Attorney General for one term. So he's seen as the established candidate. But they have a pretty far-right Republican bunch of candidates. The party there has been through a lot of infighting, and they basically say, look, we are well organized across the state, and they are not, and you can give us the advantage for that reason. That's basically their theory. It's been right since 2008. They had one bad year in 2014. Every other year, they have been able to outperform the rest of the party around the country, I should say, the rest of the state parties.
What's your sense in terms of Wisconsin?
Yeah, that's another one where you have a really terrific Democratic Party led by Ben Wickler. You have a Republican Party that I think has lost some of its steps since Scott Walker was governor, but it is incredibly divided, and it's been balanced for a long time with Democrats doing really well in Madison, really well in Milwaukee, competitive in sort of the northeast of the state and Appleton or like around the lakes, but then winning Southwest Wisconsin. And they have been losing ground in Southwest Wisconsin. That's the one I mentioned where it's tough for the party to hold it for Congress. But they've been gaining ground in the Milwaukee suburbs. And you have Johnson, who has won these two elections in the state, done well in those suburbs, but done worse in 2016. The party's been losing some ground there. The question there is, can Democrats make up ground in the suburbs if they're losing it in Southwest Wisconsin? And the problem for them has been Republicans are just, I must want to say obsessed, but they got an issue, you run on it. Their campaigns are very, very focused on crime, and specifically both the riot in Kenosha in 2020 and this totally unrelated criminal escaping police and driving his car into a Waukesha parade and murdering a bunch of people, actually killing a bunch of people. The Republican message in that state has been basically, hey, that's Democrats' fault. Murders and riots, that's Democrats' fault. And if you're a suburbanite, come on, do you want them to do that again? That's kind of what they've been doing in Minnesota. Any state where they've kind of retold the story of 2020 as the Democrats let all of our cities burn down, they'll let your city burn down too. So that's the question there, is that is that compelling enough for these suburban voters who've been kind of grossed out by their Republican craziness? In Wisconsin, nonstop, year and a half of Republicans throwing tantrums and investigating the election. Democrats are very confident that the Republican brand has been badly damaged by just how obsessed they are with trying to overturn 2020. No one outside the base cares about that whatsoever. No one wants to hear that. It's not an issue that motivates their lives. It's not relevant to them. Most people don't think the election was stolen because it wasn't. So they're like, is this party's brand so bad that people can see through them? They're in their view, see through them and say, like, they're talking about crying, they got nothing else, or not. And I think that's a bit open question. But look, there's been times when Wisconsin has like totally gone away from one party. It's remained really close. The governor has been leading throughout his race because he says, look, I'm the stability guy. I'm not that liberal. I'm not that left wing. I keep getting blocked by far right Republicans, and look, they're even going further right. Do you really want them to take over and ruin everything? That's kind of been the argument that's kept him afloat.
What are you seeing in Colorado? Because I feel like on the left side, the Democratic side, there hasn't been a ton of attention paid to it, and it seems like Bennett is doing well in the polls. But McConnell's been heaping praise on the Republican candidate O'Day, as he's like clearly just like, low on someone like Dr. Oz, for example. But could that actually be in play for Republicans?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple of Republicans tell me they wish they could just like do a untouchable jury swap and get their candidate in Washington and Colorado where they can't win and put them into New Hampshire and Pennsylvania where they could. And a lot of them think that. I mean, but the thing with O'Day is like he won the primary as a pro-choice Republican, very tough. They had not many of them have done it. And there are long memories in in Colorado of 2014. The Democrat runs on, please reelect me to save abortion rights. The Republicans say that's crazy. Stop. Who are you to say they're going to take abortion rights? Well, they're gone now. So like it turns out, once one Republican senator gets his term, votes to block Merrick Garland, etc. So Democrats have kind of held on to the idea that you need this as a bulwark against the far right, and they can do it in a state. Colorado just has tons and tons of college-educated white voters who are now incredibly Democratic. So you've seen polling where just Republicans are doing pretty well. O'Dea's image is pretty good, but they're bumping up against the ceiling of 45%. Where just those voters in Greater Denver and like Fort Collins and Boulder just like, I'm not having a great time, but by no means do I want to put Republican like Mitch McConnell in power. That's sort of their problem in Washington State too. Is like, do we have enough? And maybe they didn't over the summer. Maybe people were angry enough and there weren't any issues. It looked like Biden was flopping around. But the combination of, hey, we're trying to do some things, and those guys are led by crazy people, that is pretty compelling in these places with lots of college-educated white liberals. People who, inflation hit them too. It's harder for them to buy a house. They have a bunch of problems that were not as bad maybe 6 years ago. But by no means do they want to wake up with Mitch McConnell blocking the Biden agenda. That's kind of their trump card there.
Is that new? Like, I mean, you've been doing this for quite some time. Is that the ability for Democrats to successfully, and I guess we'll see if that works in Colorado, but anywhere, to say, look, it doesn't matter if this guy is the next Susan Collins. The point is that she votes with Republicans. She allows Mitch McConnell to be there. And so it doesn't matter who this person is as an individual. They are a reliable Mitch McConnell vote, and that's all you need to know. Because I feel like Republicans have been fairly successful over the years with that formula, but Democrats haven't made that case or been able to make that case. Is the idea of that resonating like relatively new? And are we there yet?
Well, the partisanship keeps increasing. That's what's happening. And so we're down to just a handful of places where saying I am not like other Republicans or I'm not like other Democrats can win. I mean, the delta between like the best, it's really Joe Manchin, who's the best performing Democrat in a Republican state by 20, 30 points. And after that, you can at best maybe run 10, 11 points if you're an incumbent and everybody knows you. If you're a challenger, it's very tough. So introducing yourself as hey, I'm a guy you never heard of, and I'm not like the other Republicans, harder than it ever was. And I think that's what's happened to them in those states. Just like in some red states, like there were Democratic hopes of competing in like Missouri and competing in North Carolina. And North Carolina is another good example where just at some point, voters are so polarized, so partisan. They're watching Fox all day. They're listening to talk radio. They blame the Democrat for everything their party is associated with. It's so nationalized that just nobody's really breaking anymore. So that's why Republicans 20 years ago, you get the right candidate in Washington State or Colorado. Absolutely, you can flip a place like that. And they love to talk about Virginia because, like, if we get the right crew and the right issues, you can flip a state like Virginia. But that is, I would undermine what they pulled off there. And I think Youngkin gets a lot of help from just the media coverage. It was relentlessly pretty pro Youngkin. It was like, this guy's new and exciting, has the best. But like in that election, Donald Trump shut up. Donald Trump wasn't coming for rallies. Donald Trump wasn't like in the news. He wasn't rebranding the party. The idea of Roe going away was still pretty theoretical. Like just the environment has changed and the economy is better. Gas is cheaper. Just like things are better for Democrats, and the Republican Party has clearly moved further right since then. So I think those issues have changed. So a lot of people, and you're seeing this in Virginia today. If everyone is voting in Virginia for Congress like they voted for governor, well, Democrats will be losing 3 of their members of Congress, but all of them are competitive or winning right now because voters who said, well, let's put Republicans in charge of the governor's office because I'm tired of some of this Democratic stuff. They don't think that way about Congress, not in the same way.
All right. Well,
They're much more partisan, much harder to pull apart. Yeah.
I know you got to catch a plane. So last question. Just tell us how many seats the Democrats will pick up in the Senate, and then we can wrap this up.
I think if it's an incredible night for them, I think they'll net like 1 seat, and they would take it if they had a 51 seat. Like, because one question I've been asking that I'm amazed not asked more is like, of Republicans, hey, if you have the majority, would you let Biden confirm any judges? I think the answer would probably be no.
Right.
And so a huge difference for them either way, and that issue has not come that much. But I think a great election for them would be they hold most of what they have. Maybe they flip 2 seats and lose Nevada. That's what I'd say now. Like D+1. If things got much worse for them, I think it could be like D-3.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you don't think there's any chance +2?
I think it's tough in this environment to imagine that much. I mean, I'm also chastened by the midterm elections have not been like presidentials. Like a lot of people looked really stupid when they were suggesting, "Hey, Mar-a-Lago got raided. That's going to rev up the base. That's going to be a unifying issue for Republicans." That's not how it worked. But I feel like it's going to be real tough to do more than that. I mean, I think the fact that they're making Republicans spend as many places they are is going to help someone like John Fetterman get through there, but I think it's tough to imagine them gaining much more. Like holding Arizona, holding Georgia, losing Nevada, that would be very good election for Republicans. Or for Democrats.
Democrats. I should say. All right. Well, Dave Weigel, always a pleasure. My understanding, are you switching jobs?
Oh yeah, that too. So I'm this is my last day at the Post.
Today is?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm starting at Semaphore, which is this media startup that Ben Smith is starting. Benji Starlin and I had the show from NBC News. Like, just trying something new, trying like a new sort of news organization. I'm going to be doing the same stuff, like traveling around the country covering politics. But, you like, I've been doing this long enough where I never get bored, but I'm always thinking, I wonder if there's a new way to do the reporting we're doing. Because every year, more and more people hate the mainstream media. So what can we do differently? But I'm starting that next week. So next time I talk to you, we'll be through that, and I'll have new stuff there that I'm not
new newsletter.
Plan for. I want to. We're still planning out that. My expectation is that I will. But every time I talk about this, people write stories about me. So I want them to write a story once everything is ready. But yeah, you'll be among the first people to know like what I'm doing there.
All right, folks, that's great.
Stay tuned.
Yeah,
that's
come
right.
to me, and I will give you the inside dope on what's going on with Dave Weigel.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
man.
Dave.
So there it is. A little less
Optimistic
than I was.
Yeah. Well,
We'll see.
It's hard to trust some of this. Like, we thought that Susan Collins was a goner last time when she was up for re-election. And
well, the polling going in there, into Susan Collins, I mean, that was pretty clear.
That's my point.
There was like one poll, I think, out of last like 10 or 12 that didn't have Sarah Gideon up going into into that election.
Well, there was only one poll that didn't have her going up.
Yeah, in the sense that I think it was either Rasmussen or Trafalgar who had Collins losing, but the most recent 10 besides that all had Gideon winning
Comfortably.
Oh wow, I did not.
So that's why I worry about and maybe Weigel's assessment is just
we'll
more
see.
accurate.
I also
than John from San Antonio. There's a war.
Oh yes.
Whoa.
Boom, 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 boom.
Prognosticator war.
No, that's probably not it. It's
John's
more-
gonna start his own rival media operation to Dave.
I also like the note about how the Trump raid didn't energize and unify the base entirely, because a lot of people were saying that. And I feel like those people don't know, like, even like red state Republican
beings.
voters, because Jan 6 was not that was a problem for Republicans.
Yes.
Like, people are really mixed on that and felt really concerned about it.
And it's also just like common sense. Is the raid of your guy going to be and him crying about how everything's so unfair going to be as galvanizing as a right being stripped away from half the population?
I've been trying to get, vaguely conservative people to hate the FBI for a decade now. If you're going to try to do it right ahead of the midterms for Republicans, I think it's a little bit of a big ask.
You have to first incept them and have them not have all of the images of the G-Men cartoon or whatever cartoons in their head.
Yeah. Go ahead.
There's also there's a poll that just came out from NBC poll from yesterday. 33% of registered Republican voters in a new poll view themselves more a supporter of Donald Trump over the Republican Party. as opposed to 58% who go the other way. That's actually, down
like those.
significantly.
Yeah.
In January 21, it was 46%. Now, but the fact of the matter is, and let's be clear, it will take about 3 minutes for all those people to come home if he ends up being the nominee. So that's important to keep in mind. Also, it's also important to keep in mind insofar as that, like, I feel like it's not that number's not dramatically different than it was at the beginning of 2016. The point is, though, is that you get to a point in the low 30s, probably where you are now, even where the intensity of their attachment to Donald Trump is such that it's unshakable, as opposed to other Republican candidates. So I don't know. We will.
Which guy's playing "Where We Go One, We Go All" theme music at his rally?
He's doing that that is a desperation ploy, it seems to me.
Ron DeSantis won't do this for you.
That's right. Look at me.
Do the finger thing for me.
Folks.
Ew.
Just a reminder that it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only help the show survive and thrive, you also get the the free half, free of commercials. And you make this show possible day in, day out. You can also check out justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. You can sign up for the AM Quickie at amquickie.com. Emma.
Ty.
You got a Giants game tonight.
No, that's next Monday.
Oh, sorry.
They've already won. They're already 2-0 against all odds. But yesterday on ESPN, we recapped the Week 2 NFL results, talked about who's going to get fired first, Nathaniel Hackett on the Broncos or Matt Rule in year 3 for the Carolina Panthers. We also talked about the WNBA champions, led by first-time head coach Becky Hammon, if she'll ever get a shot in the actual NBA again. And Jeff Bezos is cozying up to the NFL and his just continued attempts to probably buy the Washington Commanders. We'll see.
Matt, what's happening in the Matt Leckian media universe?
Football dies in the darkness. Tonight, Left Reckoning, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. We got GP Jacob of the Money, Power, Land Solidarity podcast, focusing on Minneapolis, talking about rent control both in St. Paul and Minnesota and how referendums were supported overwhelmingly by citizens in both of those cities, and then the mayors decided, we need working groups and to do different sort of technocratic procedures to make sure we're making the right kind of policy, meaning carve-outs for newer constructions and luxury and stuff like that. So we're going to talk about rent control politics in Minneapolis, but it's obviously a national issue. So patreon.com/leftreckoning tonight to access the postgame.
We got an email from listener Sandy. She does a show up from Canada, and she wanted us to remember EJ. EJ was a longtime listener of this program, and she wrote, a year ago, Esther Janice, EJ, known as Negan's Cat on Twitter, passed from this earth far too soon. We met her through MR Twitter shortly after I joined. She was a super fan of the Majority Report, and we shared a similar sense of humor and instantly clicked. EJ was fun, supportive, outspoken, and a much-needed light on Twitter. She always had the backs of those she considered friends. I still feel her loss and can't imagine how hard this has been for her children, family, and close friends. To them, I send love and condolences. EJ, a mother, a daughter, a friend to many, a fan of music, dance, and obscure movies, brilliant, beautiful, and compassionate. If you ever needed her, you could find her just to the left of where left is best. Gone from this earth, but never from our hearts. We've had a lot of people, over the years who have been part of this community. The blog started over 18 years ago. I mean, it's taken on a different form at different points. We had a movable type for the first Majority Report blog that existed on day one, 2004, March 30th, 2004. And we've had, folks pass on and obviously leave and cycle through and this and that. But great community, and people really become very close, even if they don't necessarily even know each other in person. So thank you for that reminder, Sandy. And EJ, this is for you. We'll head into the fun half. 646-257-3920 is the number. We'll see you there.
3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow.
What? What is that going on?
It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone? Nomi Key.
You did it.
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's.
Stop talking for a second. Now let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? This me?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello, is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports. We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.